One fine spring day in 1973, I was in the blockhouse at Poker Flat monitoring the loading and the checkout of a rocket motor payload system. Involved Gil Moore from Viacall. I received a telephone call from Milt Peake at Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory. Milt told me his management had figured out what the Oosik was, which is what we had called the launch for the involved the University of Alaska in October of the previous year. They figured out it was a penis bone of a walrus, and they were nearly apoplectic. That it was a code name for a rocket in a referred science article about to be published. When they told him it was not approved Los Alamos code name, he countered it was a University of Alaska Geophysical Institute project that he had partnered with. It turned out it was a hugely successful rocket launch involving rocket explosives and unique barium metal machining of Los Alamos and their contractor Sandia, with Aurora Science Exploration using a shape-charged barium onboard rockets launched from Poker, driven by Neil Davis and Gene Westcott at the Geophysical Institute. We launched it on March of 1972 with Ted Lane, a newscaster and owner of a Channel 11 TV and a radio station in Fairbanks, narrating live the liftoff and the shape-charged explosion high overhead. The time had been postulated that it might cut loose a magnificent aurora, and one suddenly filled our skies with color and motion for the next 10 minutes. As it turned out, this was apparently a fluke. We were never successful again, and the theoretical work soon came out stating we never could have to begin with. Unbeknownst to me, assistant to the director at Geophysical Institute, Neil Davis, had told his boss, Keith Mather, that it was a Los Alamos project. When Keith had questioned the political correctness of a science project called Oosik. Back in the blockhouse in the spring of '73, I assured Milt I would call him back with a set of plausible science words for the acronym Oosik. Within the next hour and hung up. I turned to Gil Moore and explained my dilemma to him. Gil asked how we'd come up with a name to begin with. I told him that a couple of years before, Milt and I had worked several nights together in the Estradome Observatory west of Fairbanks, waiting for an Aurora rocket to be launched from Poker. Milt said, "You know, Neil, if we do create a shape-charged barium, we could fly it aboard a rocket on this proposed project. What do you suppose we should call it?" I was at the time a graduate student with no connection to the barium or rocket work. But I replied without hesitation, Oosik. I told him with, I am sure, a smile on my face and a glee in my voice, that it would be a giant ejaculation of barium into the skies over Alaska, and Oosik is the name of the penis bone of a walrus. We laughed, but as time went by and the project came to be known, Oosik became a part of it, without, as far as I knew, anyone decided it was a good idea or not. The name just happened and stuck. Gil Moore was then and now a good friend with umpteen years of rocketry experience. He was at White Sands when some of the first German V-2 rockets captured at the end of World War II were assembled and flown. He worked for Thiokol Rocket Motor Company and was now the head of a division he created called Astromet. Gil seemed to know everybody associated with sounding rocketry and space exploration. He was a first-name basis with the head of NASA and several astronauts. He knew how to create acronyms. Gil and I stood in the control room of the blockhouse, and he walked about 30 feet through the hallway to the door, turned with a big smile on his face, and said, "Optical observation of sudden induced kinetics." I picked up the telephone and tried to reach Neil, but learned he was unavailable. I called his probe investigator, Gene Westcott, and he said, "Fine." Then I called Milt and told him what we had come up with and the approval we'd gotten from Gene and Neil, and he said, "Fine and thanks, I think this will do it," or words to that effect. In 1978, Keith Mather asked me to write the feature article for the 1979 Geophysical Institute annual report celebrating the 10th anniversary of the first launch from Poker Flat. Peggy Dace Boyd was working for me and assembled our submission from what little I had written. While Keith was editing our submission, he called Neil into his office and they had a good laugh. They both told me later about how the words describing the acronym came about. It had been a surprising revelation to Keith, and he took it well, as everything came out very well in the end. Of course, I found this poem, too. Ode to the Oosik. Strange things have been done in the midnight sun, and the storybooks are full, but the strangest tale concerns the male, magnificent walrus bull. I know it's rude, quite common and crude, perhaps it is grossly unkind, but with first glance at this bewhiskered beast, it is ugly in front as behind. Look once again, and take a second look, you'll see he's not so ugly or vile. There's a hint of a grin in that blubbery chin, the eyes have a shy, secret smile. How can this be, this clandestine glee that exudes from the walrus-like music? He know there inside, behind blubber and hide, lies a splendor contrivance, the Oosik. Oosik, you say, and quite well you may. I'll explain if you keep it between us. In simple truth, though rather uncouth, Oosik is in fact his penis. Now the size of the walrus bone would indeed arouse envious thinking. It is also a fact, documented back, there is never a softening or shrinking. This then is why the smile is so sly, that walrus is rightfully proud. Though the climate is frigid, the walrus is rigid, pray what is not man so endowed? Add to this is a smile you might miss, though the bull is entitled to bow. The one to outsmile our bull mile all is a satisfied walrus cow.